How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the movie Castle, and today we're going to be talking about Curse of the Werewolf from 1961. This is directed by Terence Fisher and stars Oliver Reed and Catherine Feller. This is based on the book Werewolf of Paris by Guy Endore, which I kind of wonder if that influenced the sequel to American Werewolf in London, American Werewolf in Paris, or do you think it's just kind of a coincidence that they both have the same location? Strangely though, despite the book being Werewolf of Paris, they moved the setting to Spain for the movie. Not quite sure why, but the atmosphere is good, so it works. This is a Hammer film. You probably could have guessed that either from this video title or the fact that I said directed by Terence Fisher. Terence Fisher did most of Hammer's classic films, a really great director, and I realized quite recently that on Universal's side, I had covered the first movie in all of their major classic monster series, but I hadn't really done that for Hammer yet. I've covered a bunch of Hammer films, and I did start the Dracula series on this channel, but I need to go around and cover my bases. I need to get the first Frankenstein, Curse of Frankenstein, and the first Mummy movie that Hammer did. I'll cover the whole series, but I need to at least knock out the first ones. And then I need to get a bunch of Hammer's classic monsters that only had one movie. This is, of course, like Phantom of the Opera and The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll, and although they're less traditional classic monsters, I need to get Plague of the Zombies, which is surprising I haven't got that since I do so much zombie stuff on this channel. And, what's the, the Gorgon. So, starting off with this one, and I'm going to go make my rounds and try to get the classic Hammer films really soon on this channel. But anyway, let's just jump right into this one, Curse of the Werewolf. The first act of this one is actually kind of strange. It covers a lot of ground. You get this guy, he's a beggar, and he stumbles into the court of a very cruel king. The king starts to torment him, and the king's new wife, in an effort to stop this, decides to purchase the beggar as a pet. He's thrown into the dungeon rather than continually being ridiculed and tortured, but unfortunately he's forgotten about down there, and the queen shortly dies because of the husband's cruelty, and he's left alone, forgotten in his cell. Years pass, and the jailer who's looking after him has a daughter who kind of takes over the duties after her father dies. She grows up, and the king, who's now really old, tries to seduce her. She refuses, so she gets thrown into jail with the old beggar who, quite unfortunately, after years of neglect, has given in to his more animalistic ways. She escapes the castle and is out, and shortly afterwards gives birth in this house of these strangers that she doesn't really know, and sadly dies there, leaving the baby alone in this world. Now, all that's the first act, so it does spend a lot of time on the backstory, and in turn it kind of feels more like a fairy tale, you know, where all these things happen, kings and stuff, and it is a strange structure, but it really helps you get into this world, and it makes it seem like a very different movie. This in no way mimics what Universal did with their Wolfman film. This is very much its own thing. So anyway, the baby is handed to these two strangers and starts behaving a little strangely. They have a rumor of a giant wolf around the city, and the father begins to suspect something and talks to the local priest. Now, here's something that I found really interesting in this film, is their description of what a werewolf is. You see, rather than just being like a disease or a curse, this werewolf is actually an evil spirit, which this is very noteworthy because films about possession were very rare before The Exorcist. The Exorcist created this subgenre, and before The Exorcist, you really just had like Hoxton and this, I guess. Even though this really isn't that much of a possession movie, it's weird to see them describing these things pre-Exorcist. This is a very unique feature. But the priest describes the werewolf as an evil invading spirit, and the reason it comes out more likely on a full moon is because that's when evil spirits are more powerful. But I love how they talk about fighting this evil spirit. Basically, it's a war between his soul and the wolf spirit, and things that are good for his soul strengthen his soul and make it easier to fight the wolf spirit and keep it down. And it was so refreshing. He's like, what can I do to help my son? And the priest says, you need to love him and make sure he has a good life. So many movies just decide to do some crazy made-up Hollywood ritual, but it was refreshing to hear the priest say, if you want to help your son, love him and make sure he has a good life. That was great, and I really loved this aspect of the movie, you know, a legitimate help the soul type deal. But anyway, we follow this kid throughout his life. He grows up and he moves out, but when he's out on his own, will it be within his control to keep the wolf spirit suppressed? Will he be able to do that on his own? And that's, of course, where the heat of the movie really gets into. But yeah, there is really good, cool werewolf moments, but you kind of have to wait for them. There's really only two major transformation sequences. There are a few other things, but only really two major sequences. So if you want crazy werewolf action, I'd recommend going to something like Dog Soldiers. This is more of a emotional story, but when you do see the werewolf, it's really cool. Cool design, you know, classic Hammer monster look to it. I also really like the love interest in this movie, Christina. I like that she's a little more aggressive. Like at one point, you know, she even steals a stagecoach because she needs it, you know. And I thought, you know, it's really fun to see the love interest be a little more assertive and know what she wants and go out and get it. And I also really liked at his job when he's older, he works at a winery, and his best friend who also works there, maybe he owns it, I don't know, his best friend is a comic relief character, really fun and good to see an early comic relief character. It's very common nowadays, but I really did like him. But anyway, the story builds up to a good climax, and I really had fun with this. It doesn't get as recognized as the Frankenstein films and the Dracula films with Lee and Cushing, but for a Hammer film without those two, it really is a classic, and it's a little bit more underlooked than it should be. And if you go through and watch the Hammer classic monsters, don't forget this film. This is really good. But yeah, more fairy tale-ish, more emotional weight than, say, werewolf action, but you really do get to follow this guy from, you know, before he was born, seeing the circumstances of his birth, and then following him through his life as he grows up. You really feel a connection to this character, to his human side, and when he has to battle the werewolf, you really feel it a lot more, and it's really great, you know. the emotional weight of caring for this guy as he's going through these struggles. But anyway, this is a Hammer classic. I definitely recommend you guys check this out. I do about 95% horror movies on this channel, so more coming soon. Thank you guys for watching, and to everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Thank you for watching.